This is Terry. I'll be the facilitator of this 10-minute interview preparation workshop video. After this interview preparation video, you'll be able to make a good first impression, recall the different types of interviews, identify the 3 types of questions, answer traditional and behavioral questions, prepare questions for the employer, and access resources for practicing interviews. If you have not already printed the handouts for this workshop, please pause this video, open in a new window in your browser, and go to the link in the screen to print the video handouts. Pause this video now with the pause button in your video player. There is more to a job interview than just confirming your skills you mentioned in your resume. Much of the time in an interview is to determine if you will fit into the organization and work well with others. There is a huge cost involved in recruiting staff. Employers want to ensure that the candidate will fit in and stay in order to avoid further costs. In other words, the interview is a time for the employer to determine if they like you. It is also a time for you to determine if you like the employer. Consequently, if you do not get selected, keep in mind that there are factors during the interview that are outside of your control, such as the personalities of existing staff. More than 500 employers were interviewed to determine what they noticed within the first 7 seconds of an interview that may cause unwanted attention. If you can avoid drawing attention or prepare for these potential reactions, you will likely make a good first impression. As I review these 11 observations during the first 7 seconds, they may seem obvious or even unfair. Body language. Includes your eye contact and the way you sit. Try to keep eye contact with your interviewer and keep good posture when sitting. Self-confidence can be communicated through your handshake. Try to have a firm handshake. It is important not to underdress or overdress for an interview. Try to dress the same as the person conducting the interview, or if unsure, wear business casual, which means no jeans and no power suits. Maintain politeness by not being too casual or artificially friendly. Positive attitude is often communicated through your facial expression. Try to remain open-minded to everything you hear by avoiding assumptions. It is illegal to be discriminated by your ethnicity. However, employers confess that they cannot help but notice when someone speaks with an accent or looks different from others. You cannot predict or control employers' reactions to ethnicity. However, you can prepare for it. Try to put a positive spin on how your diversity could be a benefit to the employer. If you feel unfairly discriminated against due to ethnicity, you have the option to report the employer to the Human Rights Commission. Competence is often judged by the way you speak. Try answering only the questions asked and use your best grammar. To maintain cleanliness, avoid eating immediately prior to the interview. One of the best signs of being organized is showing up early, 5 to 10 minutes for your interview. Also by having all documentation neatly filed in a folder or binder. Smiling is more than facial muscles. Smiling from the inside out by talking with a smile. You portray professionalism when you pay attention to all these 11-7 concerns. You may be interviewed and not even realize it. Interviews can be performed in various forms. Screening interviews can be a process such as completing a questionnaire or by your immediate reaction by the first person you meet, often the receptionist. Some interviewers have pretended to be the receptionist to form a first impression to see how you treat people. Once you pass the screening interview, you could experience one or all of the following interviews. Directed interviews are usually one-on-one, where the interviewer directs the interview and asks questions. Non-directed interviews could be when the interviewer asks questions during a tour of the workplace or over coffee. Stress interviews are often scenarios that closely simulate the work setting to see how you deal under the stress of the job. Group interviews are often conducted when large numbers of people are being hired. The interview could have several candidates present at the same time and being interviewed by one or more interviewers. Board interviews involve more than one interviewer, usually an interviewer, manager, and/or coworker. Telephone interviews are conducted over the telephone. There is a disadvantage due to the absence of nonverbal communications, example, body language. It is important to avoid dead air on the telephone interview. It is important to prepare for all three types of interview questions: traditional, behavioral, and questions for the employer. Traditional questions are common interview questions that deal with future behaviors. They are hypothetical. You can make up your answer. Behavioral questions deal with past behaviors with the assumption that your past behavior will predict future performance. Employer questions are questions you ask the employer during the interview. Traditional questions are hypothetical since they ask about a future behavior such as, how would you describe yourself? If the interviewer is not familiar with interviewing, they might get a common list of traditional questions from a book or the internet. The key to answering traditional questions is to think of the intent of the question, why the interviewer is asking the question. For example, when asking, how would you describe yourself? The interviewer is not necessarily looking for your life story. The interviewer wants to see how well you can think on your feet, to come up with an answer of how you will be an asset or a benefit to the employer. If possible, try to provide a past example of how you were an asset to a similar employer. Therefore, stop before you answer and try to think of the intent of the question. Take a look at the handout titled The Dirty Dozen Traditional Interview Questions and identify the questions that you are uncomfortable with answering. Read the intent for these questions. In order to prepare for your interview, read through answer tips of the questions that concern you the most. Pause this video now with the pause button in your video player until you have had a chance to review the list of traditional questions. Behavioral questions have recently become more popular, especially among human rights professionals or human resources professionals, due to the Privacy of Information Act that restricts the amount of information your references are willing to share. Behavioral questions can provide some proof of your ability. The belief is that past behavior is a good predictor of future performance. Behavioral questions often start with the phrase, tell me about a time. For example, tell me about a time when you had to deal with a difficult person. The interviewer is looking for a specific example from your past work experience. The worst thing you can do is rush into an answer by creating an artificial example. Most interviewers using behavioral questions are trained in behavioral interview techniques. They know it takes some time to think up a good example of past work experience. During a behavioral interview, remember to take your time by repeating the question or asking for some time to think up of an example. Think of past work examples related to accomplishments. Be very specific. Recall stories from specific situations. You know you are answering with a specific example when you hear yourself starting your answer with, "There was this one person," or "I remember this one time when." Try to avoid phrases such as "I usually," or "generally I," or "basically I would." These phrases sound like hypothetical answers about an event that might happen in the future, not past events. The interviewer will interrupt you and ask for a specific example. To confirm the validity of your answers, the interviewer may ask probing questions, such as, "How did the client react to you?" or "How did you feel?" or "How did it turn out?" Don't worry about these kinds of probing questions. The interviewer is simply trying to help you focus on a specific story. If you created accomplishment statements in your resume targeted to a specific job, you can use these statements as a way to remind yourself of relevant past experiences. Take a look at the handout titled Common Behavioral Interview Questions and identify the questions you think you might be asked of you in an interview. In order to prepare for your interview, make note under each question about a past accomplishment that could be used as a relevant answer. Pause this video now with the pause button in your video player until you have had a chance to review the list of behavioral questions. To prepare for your interview, select at least one traditional and one behavioral question. Ask someone to help you by reading the questions one at a time and giving you time to practice your answers. Pause this video now with the pause button in your video player until you've had a chance to practice your questions. It is extremely important to prepare questions to ask the employer if the interviewer provides an opportunity. Failure to ask questions of the employer may be interpreted as having a lack of interest in the employer and/or the work. Take a look at the handout titled Questions You Might Ask at a Job Interview and identify appropriate questions you wish to ask. Pause this video now with the pause button in your video player until you've had a chance to review the list of employer questions. For additional help with interview preparation, consider viewing the Winway interview videos at the Employment Resource and Information Center. Double-click on the Winway Resume Deluxe shortcut. In the Winway Welcome screen, click on the Interview menu. Keep in mind that the computer sound must be turned on and set at an appropriate volume. If viewing in a room occupied by other people, use headphones. Ask the reception for headphones. Interview videos will automatically start playing. Click off the check in the autoplay option in order to select the desired topic from the menus on the left. Click on the Salary menu in the top red menu bar to listen to interview questions regarding salary expectations. In summary, make a good first impression by remembering the 7-11 rule. Be ready for any type of interview. Prepare both traditional and behavioral questions. And have questions ready for the employer. And remember, the primary purpose of the interview is to determine if you are a good fit. Therefore, be yourself. I hope you have found this interview preparation workshop video useful and that it will result in you finding meaningful and sustainable work. Please take a moment to complete the online survey from the page containing the handouts and/or send us an email and let us know what you think of this video. Thank you.